And it's time for Acts 1:4. We're almost done with the 5 verses for this week in the first paragraph of Acts. And so, as is the custom, let's start by pronouncing this verse. And if you want to learn, if you don't know how to pronounce Greek, if you don't recognize the letters, on the very last slide, I have a link to a video where I talk about how to pronounce the letters and the sounds using Erasmian pronunciation, which of course drives modern Greeks crazy. But here is an Erasmian. See if you can do it first, see if you can pronounce it, and then here's how I would pronounce this verse using Erasmian pronunciation, which is very boring, I'll admit it. Kai sunalizomenos parengelen autois apo hierosolumon. Sorry, this is Jerusalem. Hierosolumon. There you go. Me korizesthai, Allah perimenein tain, epangelion, tu petros, hein ekusatemu. This is, mu is called an enclitic. It translates as of me. So mu means of me. But the mu here is a freeloader as far as accent is concerned. It refuses to do accents. And so the previous word has to pick up the slack. So akusate has 2 accents because of that mu, the freeloader. And so it's kind of like one sound, ekusatemu. Anyway, so there you have the pronunciation. What about the translation? So those of you who are reviewing Greek from some time in the past, go ahead and see if you can translate this. Okay, that's good. Here's how I would translate it, something like this. And Kai, hopefully you know Kai, sunalazomenos, this is something like gathering together or eating together while they were eating together. Parengelen, he commanded to them, or them, here's what he commanded, from Jerusalem not to depart. Notice that Jerusalem's plural. This is very common with ancient cities, and I think there's something to be learned here from the fact that most ancient city names were plural. I think it's because they didn't think of a city as a single city so much as of a collection of little districts or demes that were together. Athens is a plural. Lots of cities in the ancient world are plurals. From Jerusalem not to withdraw, but to remain or to await the promise of the Father which you heard of me. So this is a relative clause is what that's called, and this is a relative pronoun, the which or the that. Interesting change of point of view here. So it starts off in the third person, he, but then at the end it says, which you heard of me. So it switches from the third person to the first person. Third person is he, she, or it. And then first person is I or we. And so Luke, let's call him Luke. We don't know technically who the author of Acts is, but it shifts from describing in the third person to kind of quoting Jesus. You heard this from me. So there's a translation of the verse. Let's go into a little bit more depth with an interlinear here. So I'm going to parse these words on the next page, but we can also get the pump primed. So this is a participle. Men are passive participles. That's where my clue. By the way, men at the end of a word, don't confuse men at the end of a word because that's an ending. That's a first person plural we ending. But in the middle here, it's a participle. Men are passive participle, or perhaps in this case a deponent, which means it looks passive but it's actually active. Okay, so this is an aorist. I'll talk about that on the next slide. But basically, to give you a foretaste of glory divine, the nu is a movable nu. A nu with an epsilon in front of it is often a movable nu, which means that the only purpose of this nu here is for the sound. It has no meaning at all. Is a very common third-person singular past tense ending. So that's where the he comes from. That is where the he comes from. Anyway, more on that on the next page. And eating together, he instructed them from Jerusalem not to withdraw. So this is a infinitive. 6 out of the 7 infinitives end in I. The seventh one is ein. So you have the two different infinitive endings in the space of 3 words here. Not from Jerusalem, not to withdraw, but to await the promise of the Father. So there's a genitive. This is a nice genitive, but this is the third declension genitive, if you remember. The song goes archon antas, anti antas. So this is the genitive singular. And again, I give a link to the video I've made with all the ending songs is at the last slide. Relative pronoun in a relative clause, which you heard. This is aorist, I know, because it has a sa. It's a nice little sa, predictable sa, that tells me it's aorist. Okay, so there's the interlinear. Well, let's dig in a little deeper with the parsing. So this is, as I said, men are passive participles. I'm going to call it deponent because it's from sunalidzamai. Oh my, it's a deponent word. Deponent means, and don't ask why Greek does this. Just don't ask why. I don't know why. But Greek has these forms that look deponent, but they're not. I mean, they look passive, but they're not. And this is one of them. And so this is, we say it's deponent, even though it's men are passive or men are middle in form. It's present because all the letters of the present stem are there. See, all the letters are there. If you compare them, all the letters up until the ending are there. It's a participle. This os or os is a nominative masculine singular ending. Life is good. Why is it nominative masculine singular? Because Jesus is nominative masculine singular. Okay, so here's an aorist. How do I know this is aorist? Well, it's from this. This is a liquid verb. How do I know it's a liquid verb? Because its stem ends in l, and that sound, like M-N-L-R, they're liquid consonants, and so liquid verbs don't do sigma alphas. They don't do sigmas, which with the normal aorist you would expect it to add a sigma and then the epsilon for the third person singular. So how do I know it's aorist? Well, one of the ways I know it's aorist is because it's dropped one of the lambdas. So the liquid verbs only have 2 lambdas in the present stem. The aorist also does an internal lengthening. It's kind of weird. The epsilon goes to epsilon iota. I know it's crazy, but it's just something we memorize. And then this eta is an augmented alpha. So it does have 3 signs that it's aorist. It's dropped a lambda, it has internal lengthening, and it has an augment there. So it's an aorist, it's active, indicative, third singular. Okay, it's possibly an ingressive aorist if you want to go intermediate, in which case we would translate it something like he began to command them. There are different nuances to these tenses. Okay, chorizosthai is a present active infinitive. I know it's present because, again, if I compare the letters up into the ending, all the letters are there up to the zeta, and then this is ending stuff. It's actually not active. Please forgive me. It's not active. It's I think it should be chorizomai. I think it's deponent. This is a passive infinitive. The esth, the sigma theta, tells me it's passive. So I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Present passive or present deponent infinitive. Like I said, 6 out of the 7 infinitives end in I. And then here's a aorist active indicative, second plural, from akuo. So the te is second person plural. How do I know it? An, es, e, amen, ete. So the te is a second person plural. And again, all those songs are on the final slide link. Sigma alpha tells me it's aorist. There's a nice little augment on the front where the alpha has been lengthened. And you have it. You heard. Okay, so there's a little bit of a review. Once again, here is the slide I had up on yesterday's telling you this reviews all of the categories of Greek. This is a run through all of Greek grammar in a real quick way, obviously. Here's a video for all the letters, and then here's my songs, not just mine, some of them I got from Rory Skelly, on memorizing the endings. See you tomorrow.